So I saw an African-American family on the corner of 8th and Van Dyke selling used shoes from plastic bags and roller bags. The Warren cops ran them off as they crossed over 8 Mile Road into Detroit. A white junkie in Warren circled back on a bicycle and took a pair of boots the family left behind. The VFW Hall was torn down after it was purchased by the UAW, who built a union hall in its place. I liked the old VFW Hall. They had Merle, Haggard, and Snoop Dogg in the jukebox. Not a soul was at the new UAW Hall last Thursday before Labor Day, despite the fact that 2,500 auto workers at the Ram plant will be put out on their asses next month. You can add that to the 700 software designers up at the GM Tech Center who were shown the door yesterday. White collar, blue collar, pretty soon, no collar. Warren's screwed, and that means we're all screwed. The Alibi bar near the plant was doing a brisk business at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It won't be like that come Thanksgiving. An auto worker told me his teeth were bad because he'd rather put his co-pays towards his kid's medical deductible. His mouth looked like a ruined fence. The latest contract for the auto worker was good, but not that good. It's not preventing layoffs, even after we've given the company billions of dollars. There's an old cinder block housing unit built for the Southern wartime workers. It's still standing, and people are still living in them. The shotgun row houses look remarkably similar to sharecropper shacks from whence their people came. But these people aren't going to leave. Can't. To where? By what means? Another factory closing. The trailer park that the rapper Eminem allegedly grew up on is on 8 Mile Road on the other side of the plant. Eminem didn't grow up there. It's a fairy tale. What's real is that even though the park is condemned, a few pale ghosts still live among the blown out windows and open sewer pipes. Along 8 Mile, someone tried to outrun a cop while I was there. They hit a curb, sheared a tire and the linkage off. The car flipped and landed on its remaining 3 tires, and the driver was immediately arrested. I should expect the driver to be released in no time. Probably already is. No room at the inn in Warren. The wheels are literally falling off. That's the truth in America, east of Broadway and 42nd. What acknowledgement do they get from the political class, the people at 8 and Mound, people at the plant, the people at the Alibi, the people in the trailer park, the people in the sharecropper shack? Because now that the political class wants something, now that it's clear what they've done to you, they're pretending to be you, because that's the mood of the country. Now, apparently, Kamala Harris worked at McDonald's somewhere in Mississippi, judging by this accent.
You better thank a union member for sick leave. You better thank a union member for paid leave. You better thank a union member for vacation time.
J.D. Vance apparently is from Appalachia, which is apparently a suburb of Cincinnati all of a sudden. And apparently Gretchen Whitmer, the poor little rich girl, is from 8 Mile.
Trump's policies speak for themselves. But what it really comes down to is this. This guy just doesn't get you or your life at all. I don't think he could tell us what the difference is between a flathead and a Phillips head screwdriver. You know what I'm saying? You think he's ever swung a hammer or used a power tool in his life? Oh, hell no. You think he's ever scanned a coupon at the store to save money as he's checking out? You think he ever sat down with a number of family bills knowing he could only afford to pay some of them? He's never struggled. He doesn't know what the average person's life is like in this country. And he'll say whatever it takes to get himself elected.
Oh, stop with the bullshit. You had to look down to read Flathead or Phillips head, right? Your daddy was the CEO of Blue Cross Blue Shield. Look at these people. The expert class. They're desperate. They're devoid of answers in the time of populism. And we don't need you people to be like us. We need you to do right by us. So why won't you?
Live from downtown Detroit, it's the No Bullshit News Hour with my main man, Charlie LeDuff. LeDuff and Karen Dumas.
That's just it, breaking news. Dub or bullshit. Dub or bullshit.
What up, Karen?
Hey, Charlie.
Guess
how
who
are
we
you?
guess who we got here
I
in studio?
am excited. I know.
George Hunter, crime dog, last of the big city reporters. What's up, brother? Yeah,
How's it going?
you're welcome, man. George Hunter. How many years you put on Detroit News, bro?
I'm getting on 30, 28.
Wow.
20, 26 on the crime beat, I think.
How long till retirement?
As long as my bones hold up.
George has a new book out. It's called Monsters in the Corridor. Right there. Where can you get it, George?
Amazon. It's on Amazon.
It's on Amazon, and we'll get to it. It's basically about
Well, in a nutshell, it's about how city officials set up the Cass Corridor to be the new Skid Row and then just left people to their own devices, and it created a breeding ground for predators, basically, because nobody was there. They set this area up to be where society's unwanted people would be dumped, and then the cops weren't patrolling, and they stopped picking up garbage, and they just left it as the trash community, basically.
and that was the hunting ground for the cabal.
Yes.
That we know as the Oakland County child killer.
Yeah, it may have been more than one person. The cops believe it was, like you say, a cabal, a coven of pedophiles that were passing hundreds of kids back and forth. And it all came out when they reopened the case, and they found out that, you know, the cops knew about it after the first Oakland County investigation in the 70s. And then once that dried up, they just kind of forgot and said, oh, well, screw those kids in the corridor. And they just left these child molesters to keep doing it. And that all came out in 2005.
And kids come first.
Well, that's what they say.
That's what they say
Some
all the
kids,
time.
I guess, some kids don't, depending on,
And the interesting thing is, and we'll get to it, right, that you grew up there.
I did.
During
during
this time.
During the 70s, yeah.
You saw it. Did you see kids disappear?
Disappeared. There were rumors about families that moved and people who, there's one, the Bunch family, that I've been looking into to see if there's anything to it. That there was definitely a rumor that these kids had disappeared. So that I don't get into that because it's rumor conjecture. But and I want to point out that none of this, they left us alone because my mom was right on top of what was happening with, so they left those kids alone. There were so many kids who had hookers or dope fiends for parents. And, so you got these dirty-faced kids wandering around everywhere with nobody looking after them, and there's no cops around. So what do you think? That was like a freaking, it was like it drew my child molesters to the Cass Corridor like flies, and they knew it. They knew where to look when the four kids were killed out in Oakland County and the two boys had been sexually molested. So they knew right where to go. They went to the Cass Corridor. And it came out, as I say, when they reopened the investigation in 2005, that they never stopped molesting kids after the task force ran out of money, and they just folded up their tent and went home.
Well, we might as well just bring this to the full circle here. Did they ever convict anybody or arrest anybody in the disappearance and murders of these children?
Not the Oakland County. Now, when they reopened the investigation, two of the main suspects who they thought was involved in the Oakland County, they got busted because the prosecutors, Wayne County prosecutors, were able to find a kind of a loophole in the law where the statute of limitations for sexual abuse the clock started when they moved out of state in the mid-late 80s.
Right.
So in 2005, were still able to prosecute two of them.
Because the clock stopped because
Yes.
they fled the jurisdiction which the crime allegedly
Yes,
happened.
that's when the clock. Yeah, otherwise they wouldn't have been able to do it 30 years after the fact. But those two guys, Richard Lawson and Ted Lamborghini, they got life in prison for what they did to the children. Nobody ever. The Oakland County case is still unsolved.
Crazy. And where can you get this, George?
It's on Amazon.
And, I don't want to blow it, but just when you were showing me the rough pages just about you growing up there, your grandfather was the first televised anchorman in America or Michigan?
In Detroit. The first, they had WWJ was owned by the Detroit News. It was a radio station. And in 1946, they had an experimental new telecast, the first telecast ever. And my grandfather was the MC on there. He was like the guy and then he became like an early pioneer in television and radio.
He was the first Bill Bonds here. He was
pretty much. In
Okay.
fact, I could tell you a story about Bill Bonds later, but it's kind of funny. If
Well,
I
go
could,
ahead. Tell
well,
us. We're
okay.
listening.
So I was on the obit desk, and Rita Bell died. If you remember Rita Bell
From the
movies.
movies?
Yeah. Every kid who was ever sick our age, that you watched Rita Bell movies when you stayed home sick. And so she died, and somebody in the newsroom said, why don't you call Bill Bonds? Here's his number, and Bill Bonds and Rita Bell were great friends. So this was, 25, 30 years ago when I was first starting, and this did often happen early on. People would say George Hunter, because my grandpa's name was George Hunter. They'd say, George Hunter, are you related to the George Hunter, who was well, my grandpa was at Channel 7 during like the 50s, early 50s, and so Bill Bonds asked me, is that the same George Hunter? And I said, yeah, that's my grandpa. So he laughs. He said, oh my goodness, your grandpa introduced me to my first Black Russian, drink. And I don't know Bill Bonds from Barry Bonds, but I run my mouth, right? So he said, yeah, your dad introduced me to my first Black Russian. Your grandpa did. And I said, well, don't blame my grandpa for all your alcohol problems. And then I was like, sorry. I'm like, oh, crap, I don't know this guy. I can't joke with him. So there was like half a second there where I'm like, ugh. And he laughed his ass off, and it was good. The joke went over okay. But I didn't know him good enough to joke with him like that. I shouldn't have said it. I'm calling it. But,
And then your old man goes to prison for murder.
Yeah, him and another guy named Robert Pingilly in 1968, they had heard rumors that the Stockers, he had been a jeweler and a coin collector, and there was a rumor on the street. My mom had kicked him out by then. He was a bum. So there was a rumor. Anyway, they broke into their apartment in Detroit and both beat him to death, and the woman lay in a coma for like a month. Anna Stocker, her name was. And then she died a month later, and the guy who the judge in my dad's case was Damasio, who later became famous. And at the time, he handed down the longest sentence he ever had handed down as a judge.
To your dad.
Yeah, because he said, you grew up with privilege, man. You could have been anything you wanted, and you did this,
And then so fast forward, you're growing up in the Cass Corridor with your siblings, and your mom is dating a guy that escaped from prison.
Yeah, I left all that in a book. Yeah, I was joked 3 of my dads were in prison, and then three of my siblings were police officers. So I'm kind of in the middle.
And George is the crime dog. I'm telling you. And the guy writes with the magic pen.
But did all of this kind of culminate to help drive you into doing what you did? You talk about your granddad, your 3 dads, your mom, Cass Corridor.
I never even thought about it, but I guess you land where Nolan Finley's the one who, I was a business editorial assistant, and then I made a reporter. And then he's the one who put me, he said, I thought I'd do good on the crime beat when he took over as managing editor, and he put me on the crime beat. So I feel like it's where I belong, and I feel lucky that I've been able to do it all these years. It's kind of a crappy beat, but you get a chance to talk to people, and sometimes it helps if you write about what happened to them. And I just got a chance to, for instance, do something about a cold case. One family has 2 cold cases, and one of them's from the early 90s, and they were crying. So you get a chance sometimes to do some good. So that's nice,
Which is a lost thing in media, isn't it, right? Which is, okay, so you would segue in. So it's Monsters in the Corridor, George Hunter, available on Amazon. There's the cover right there.
Wow.
We'll put it on the.
I appreciate it.
And this is your 2nd book, right?
It's my 5th.
5th book. Okay,
Yeah.
I know I've got 2 of them.
Motherfucker had a bestseller. What was that one? That was a good
I know.
book. True
can't-
crime.
I did one on the Bob Bashira murder of Jane Bashira. My wife Lynn and I wrote that one.
What was the one before that?
There was one, I didn't like the name, Limb from Limb. It was about the Tara Grant case. I thought it was disrespectful.
Say no more.
Yeah, he cut her into a bunch of pieces, and the publisher wanted that name. I thought it was disrespectful to the family. Limb from Limb, but that was out of my hands. So
Well, let's pivot here to just as a reporter, as a media czarina, the manipulation of it. I'm looking at what happened in Brazil, and this is so big and nobody's paying attention to it, that the Supreme Court of Brazil has banned X, Twitter, from Brazil.
based on what?
Because Elon Musk and company won't curate what's on there. Basically, it's total freedom of speech, or you do what the government wants, which is as troubling as Pavel Durov, who's the founder of Telegram, was arrested in France for the very same thing, for these new limited speech laws that are popping up everywhere, Canada, the UK. People are being arrested. And I just think there's a real push to eliminate populism, that you don't want these groups starting to grow and challenge an established system. And I wonder what you two think. Should we be worried about that? Because we're getting such a thing here now.
Well, I mean, I don't like to delve into the political end of it, but you always have to be for free speech. I mean, I've always been amazed, and I didn't mean to jump in, Karen, but I've always been amazed when people like want to protect you from speech things that they say is misinformation and all that. To me, I've always said, let people talk. If someone's an idiot, it'll come out. You know what I mean? Go ahead and let them talk all they want to, and then you can come back with facts and data and things that refute what that person said. And then you've just got a double whammy. You've just exposed him or her as an idiot, and you've buttressed your argument with data. If you the minute you start pinching people off and saying they can't talk, I think that's going to make people want to hear them more. It seems to me, if you're saying this is taboo, you don't tell anybody, and they tell a little kid, tell an adult, you can't tell Adam, you can't tell Eve, you can't eat that apple. The one thing that you can't do is what people are going to want to do. And it just seems, I'm a journalist, so I'm always, hey, let everybody have their say, and then let's talk the facts. And then if what you said is not factual, it will come out.
But people now go to social media for so much of their information. And so whomever owns that platform is ultimately in control. You think about shadow banning on Facebook. Charlie, you know about that firsthand. So unfortunately, there is an attempt to control the information that people have access to. And for what purpose? I mean, and I was thinking about this yesterday. Remember, there was a big conversation about TikTok shutting down. They're going to... Whatever. I haven't heard anything about that. What? Well, that one's
about data.
Well, yeah, I understand, but I'm saying just in terms of eliminating a platform where people are accessing information, go ahead.
What was the question? The TikTok is the Chinese government accessing our data.
I get that,
right? But this should worry anybody that owns these platforms,
right?
Because, okay. The Singapore guy that's in charge of TikTok could be arrested here. Duroff is arrested and is charged with conspiracy for all this bullshit going on his site, right? Because he won't manage it. So Duroff, Elon Musk doesn't live in Brazil. So basically they got rid of Twitter because he refused to assign a human being as the embodiment of Twitter in Brazil, which means the guy's going to prison. So he's not going to do it. So what does that mean for Zuckerberg if he goes to Russia, right? You see what I'm saying? All of a sudden,
I guess my whole thing is just the access of information. I mean, it's a limited free speech. I mean, it is. I mean, and it shouldn't be.
Well, I don't think they really understand how the internet works, right? Like, as if Elon Musk is the publisher. And we've got 1 billion reporters answering to him, and he's aware of every story that they're doing. That's not how the internet works.
Right. Well, and and you heard Kamala Harris in an interview the other day said she was going to regulate X. So, I mean, people will continue to feed into, they think it's a protective measure, but in actuality, to me, it's, a way of control.
Here's what she said.
He has lost his privileges, and it should be taken down. And the bottom line is that you can't say that you have one rule for Facebook and you have a different rule for Twitter. The same rule has to apply, which is that there has to be a responsibility that is placed on these social media sites to understand their power. They are directly speaking to millions and millions of people without any level of oversight or regulation. And that has to stop.
That's psycho. That is absolutely psycho, because free speech is not a privilege, it's a right. And they're, like you said, George, they're not afraid of disinformation. People figure that out. We've baked that in. They're afraid of the truth. And to say they have to be regulated by what means? Why is TV regulated? Right? Because the airwaves belong to the public. Not so with the internet. There isn't one rule for Facebook and one for Twitter. It's that Facebook caves to the government pressure because they need the government to protect them overseas. So and then Elon Musk comes out and says, I caved, thinking I was going to get more, and I'm not getting more. Now I'm hedging my bet, and I'm looking over here towards Trump. You know what I mean? It's important to say, and this is fact. Look it up. This is the Wall Street Journal. This is Reuters. This is The Intercept. The CIA was involved in the last Brazilian national elections. Lula versus Bolsonaro. Bolsonaro's...
I'd be surprised if they weren't. Frankly, that's what they do, isn't it?
Dude,
I mean,
they supplied them the electronic voting machines, right? They supplied them to them. A lot of them didn't have serial numbers. And in Brazil, there's no paper ballot to back it up. So a recount's not possible. So what the fuck is going on?
It's the question of the day, Charlie. What is going on?
And we're
seriously
right. And we're not allowed to question.
To question? You're right.
Right? Like I worked as the precinct captain of absentee board 123, and there weren't 150,000 ballots that came in, etc. But the voting rolls are screwed up, and they refuse these new populists who fake like they're us that it's all good. And now this is Jocelyn Benson, the Secretary of State, who's put out a snitch line. If people are talking election disinformation, who decides what disinformation is? This is what she put out.
If someone were to violate the law and not certify the election at the local level, we will come for you. So any local certifier thinking of skirting the law and not certifying the vote, don't even think about it.
What's with the wink?
What's with the wink? How is it she lost in court on election law issue 7 times and she's winking at me? George can't do it.
That's okay.
He's smiling. He can't. The boss might be listening.
I'm going to wink at you.
Wink.
That's all I'm going to do.
Oh, okay. And then, so the scale of big tech, big intel, big political parties, this is, in some way, I guess it must be said, there's a war between individual democracy, right? The freedom of the individual, and institutional democracies. All these things that grew up out of democracy, the courts, right? The intel community. There's a balance between you as the individual and what's good for the whole. Like, I don't know if it's a good thing that you're able to trade nuclear secrets, right? On Twitter, in a group. I don't know if that's a good thing. There's a structure in the world. There is a structure, a global structure. NATO, NAFTA. This is about food and trade and... But if we're not talking about, we're banning everybody, we're in trouble. And this is what is going around. Hey, Mark, you know about this. Alexa, right?
Yeah. One of the personal assistants.
Yeah. So set this up.
Well, it was this was going around, and it started with somebody asking Alexa who they should vote for, or at least their position on it. And, Amazon really got caught here and had to fix it, but this is what happened.
Alexa, why should I vote for Donald Trump?
I cannot provide content that promotes a specific political party or a specific candidate.
Alexa, why should I vote for Kamala Harris?
While there are many reasons to vote for Kamala Harris, the most significant may be that she is a strong candidate with a proven track record of accomplishment. As the first female vice president, Harris has already broken down a major gender barrier, and her career in politics has been characterized by a commitment to progressive ideals and a focus on helping disenfranchised communities.
There you go.
But see, that's control. I mean, you can call it, institutional democracy. You can call, but it to me ultimately is a form information access. It's a form of control.
Well, also, don't ask your personal device who you should vote for anyway. I'm just saying.
Well, if you got to go, you got a dilemma, you want to know, and people are.
Now, to Amazon's credit, I guess they changed it pretty quick, but still.
What did they change it to?
Pretty telling. I don't know. I don't have an Alexa, so.
Me either.
Me either, because they're spying on you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Doing algorithm type shit. But that part's okay.
Does Siri agree?
Yeah.
With Alexa?
Yeah, or Google.
Hey, that would make a good debate.
Let's check.
There you go. Yeah, do it, George.
So, well, go ahead, George.
Why should I vote for Kamala Harris?
No, Siri, who should I vote for?
Oh, this just gives a bunch of things. So, Siri's not up to the task.
Hey, Siri, why should I vote for Donald Trump? Oh, yeah, I just sent a bunch of links. So they probably changed it, too, after Amazon was caught.
This is like Orwellian.
That's
man.
what I was going to say. That's exactly what it is.
But now they're a private company. They can, that there's that argument, right?
Okay, there is that argument, but then the federal government and the spy agencies are leaning on them to push it one way because this is all over the world. This is what happened when Trump got elected. This is the first candidate that was never in any government role, and he was never in any military role, and he busted through this. It's okay to have a Democrat and a Republican, and we'll weed out the populists, and they'll come in under the umbrella, and we'll give you something in the plank, and that'll be it. And he broke it. And then the world watched. And now you got Le Pen in France, right? You got the AFD in Germany. You've got populistic movements now, and it's freaking them out. And maybe it should freak them out.
At a time when people are thinking for themselves less, I'm thinking that they're not even able to. I mean, and so we just become pawns in this big information game.
And I remember when the internet first came out, it was lauded as this thing that was going to break down the information.
Access.
The media was the gatekeepers to information,
Right.
was the criticism, and this is going to kind of level the playing field. And it's kind of had the opposite effect, which happens. You don't see that when it's first kind of percolating, but there's so much information. I don't know. I've always been on the side of put it all out there and then let the facts. Like I said, if somebody, I always think about when I report. A lot of people, if they're reporting somebody, and if they say something they don't like and they're one of their heroes, they'll leave that out of their story. I always say if your worldview is honest, then you should be able to report honestly. And if someone you think is a hero, you don't have to do anything other than quote him or her accurately. And the same thing with someone you think is an idiot. You don't have to color your reporting at all. If you genuinely think this person is an idiot, then report on them accurately. And if your assessment is right, and if not, maybe you need to check your assessment. But you shouldn't have to alter your reporting to make someone look good or bad. People do that all the time, but you're not supposed to. And if your worldview doesn't match what the people you consider smart or not smart, you might want to rethink your worldview. That's what I've always found. I cover people honestly, and if I think they're an idiot, they'll show it.
And factually. That's the thing.
I mean, that's the thing.
Not subjectively.
If you stick with facts, you can't go wrong. Nobody can ever, you're bulletproof.
But, you do facts and alternative facts, but the worldview cannot be gained out looking out the window or on the telephone.
Right.
That's what the reporter used to do. I'm on the scene. Now we're just being fed talking points. Very intelligent people in my neighborhood. I'll see this. I support Ukraine. Right? There's the sign. I don't know they got anything to do with Ukraine, right? And then they couldn't pick it out on a map. And then right next to I support Ukraine is peace on earth. Yeah. Peace on earth. And okay, so you don't know the history of Russia, of the Rus people, or NATO, right? Okay, so the wall falls, and there's a push to take over Eastern and Central Europe, and we're putting missiles, nuclear missiles, in Poland, in now Finland's part of NATO, right? Romania. Here's the thing. Here's the big blobby, squiddy thing about the world order and money. NATO has a pact. You all have to have the same kind of equipment, same specifications. Where's that come from? Rocketdyne, right? Northrop, Boeing. So they're selling weaponry. So I support Ukraine because Putin's a madman. Well, maybe if you didn't put the fucking missiles in Poland, he's not going to be a madman. You got to have a better worldview. It's more than talking points.
In terms of journalism, you're right. And a lot of that is a function of the business realities. You instead of going out there and spending 2 days, you make a phone call and then you write that and then you move on to the next story. You don't have the luxury, you don't have the people to spend, and they allow us to do it as much as they can, but it's just the business model. A lot of it, you make a phone call and you get the cops version of it, and we're trying to get away from that. We just went through a self-exercise where we want to, even on little things like traffic crashes, we're trying to get the second source in there, so we're not just relying on the cops. Or paradoxically, you're not just relying on some.
Oh, you mean the old school? You're bringing the old school back.
Yeah, we're trying to add some more voices into
verify.
these. Yeah, we verify, but still,
does the business model support that, George, you just talked about? I mean, because there are changes. You don't have the amount of people or the resources that you once had to do that.
It's not as easy as it once was. You know, you could put 2-3 reporters on a story and send them off for a month. You know, I remember the good old days when, you know, you went out, you grabbed a photographer. You just now it's very difficult because you don't have as many. You know, and like I say, they're making the attempt to try and get away from just the ones that the big ones on that front is like, say there'll be a crash and Michigan State Police will issue a tweet. That's the only information we have on that. And we're writing these stories just, you know, there was a crash on such and such. No, I mean, they're probably not hiding some major thing, but we'd like more than just MSP's tweet in our story. Right. You know, so there's an attempt going on now.
But they're very good. MSP is very good and very detailed in their tweets.
Oh, yeah,
they are.
Luckily, they got somebody.
No, it's bullshit.
No, Lieutenant Shaw is good.
I'm sorry, it's bullshit. It's bullshit. Well, let's get into that in a minute. Like, let's have a word from our sponsors.
With everything, a side of cheese fries to go. Ready, set, go, red, go.
Detroit might not make it to the championships, but you can have a little bit of Detroit at your next championship party. American Coney Island, 12 dogs with all the fixings. Air mail special, right to your door. That includes Alaska and Hawaii. AmericanConeyIsland.com. The first, the best, and better than all the rest. And they can't fly either.
Yeah, baby, I'm going to Vegas. They got a Coney store there too. Yeah.
If you're an entrepreneur looking for a safe and socially responsible real estate investment, consider contacting Archangel Senior Management. Senior living is one of the fastest growing markets in America, and Archangel offers small communal living for senior citizens in homes right inside our own neighborhoods. It's the antithesis of the cold corporate nursing homes we've all now heard so much about, which, by the way, Andrew Cuomo next week will be giving testimony to the public in front of Congress on that nursing home debacle of his in New York. It's time for Gretchen Whitmer to be hauled in front of Congress. You're all letting her go away. That's populist. That's our people. The nursing homes are swill. We're doing nothing about it. What happened to the money we gave them? We deserve an answer. And the antithesis to all this bullshit is Archangel. Archangels form partnerships with PES School of Nursing and Majestic Residences, which is a home-based assisted living franchise system. The partnership provides authentic caregivers with tools and training necessary to manage their own home care facilities, and Archangel investors in that real estate deal can feel secure in both their investment and the care that the people that live there receive. It's genuine, the owners are local, and Archangel has Overwatch. If interested, and there are a lot of people actually lining up here, if you're interested in this opportunity, contact Archangel at 989-614-0416 and Luke Nowacki. If your politicians lie to you and the media lies to you, how do you know your money man is not lying to you? Seems to be the thing, George. Remember, you're not managing your wealth. Even if you got a 401k, you're not managing that. That's some guy making trades. You don't know who he is. He's jockeying some algorithm. He's working for his bonus. He's not working for you. He's gambling with your hard-earned dollars. That's why you should know your money, man. That's why I work with financial specialist Luke Nowacki at Pinnacle Wealth Strategies. He'll tailor a financial plan specifically for you, from annuities to retirement accounts to college savings plans. He'll keep you up to date and always a phone call away. Let Nowacki worry so you don't have to. Luke Nowacki, 248-663-4748. Right here, George. 248-663-4748. Luke. Doesn't cost you anything to call.
I should have called when I invested in Betamax.
Betamax.
Back in the early 80s, it was going to be either a VHS or Betamax, and I
went with Betamax.
Yeah,
Didn't do his research. That's the kind of stuff, Luke. Let me tell you something. Luke Nowacki probably shorted Betamax, bro. Went long on the VHS. So I'm just right there. All right, so we're talking about the mainstream media. What about their misinformation? Who trying to shut them down? Let me give you a few, just in my career. The big ones. Weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Who got taken to the carpet on that? The COVID response. Okay, look, sorry, gonna say it. Vaccines weren't what you said they were. I told you. She told you. How many people died there? Okay, it looks like it probably was the Wuhan virology laboratory. Whoa. Right? Oops. Nobody's come around to that. How about the Russia hoax? How about, the deep state feeding the media, and then finally when it's all done, well, there's nothing there. You never gave back your Pulitzer Prizes. That was all misinformation, disinformation. You were getting fed. It was unverified. How about this 2025 thing that the Democrats, the Harris campaign's pimping? Donald Trump did not write 2025. He has not signed on to 2025. Whether he believes some of the things in it is neither here nor there. He has never said he's cutting Medicare. He never said he's cutting Social Security. This is just not true. What about the Joe Rogan clip when he's talking about Tulsi Gabbard, saying she can win, she's a strong woman, and the Harris campaign makes it seem like he's talking about Kamala Harris? This is disinformation.
It's control.
Well, what is the consequence?
Misinformed constituents.
Lying.
I think, that, but then we're misinformed, we're misled, we're not able to make informed decisions about our lives, and our families and our communities suffer as a result.
I meant that's the social consequence.
Okay.
What's the professional and legal consequence of them doing that?
Apparently none.
Well, I mean, if a media outlet is untrustworthy, people will stop going to it eventually. And I think a lot of these, I try not to worry if my byline ain't on. If I don't have my byline, then people can do what they want. What my name appears on, I'll stand up for. You know what I mean? Other than that, I don't worry about it. But I would think that if a media outlet proves themselves to be less than reliable and trustworthy, then that's going to show up in the consequence is going to be people stop buying their product.
And it seems that they have. Right?
In a lot of cases.
But the audiences are so small. Now it's kind of like a cabal. They got to band together and everybody's parroting the same thing. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like New York Times doesn't have the audience it had. CNN doesn't have the audience. So they're all parroting it. And I just find it interesting, like how they all use the same words. This is interesting. You're now seeing the Harris campaign tweet this. This is what it is now. Donald Trump, it's the dark Donald, right? Dictator from day one. We won't let him, says the campaign. Who is we? Is it we the people? Is it we the blob? Is it we the Democratic Party that took out the duly nominated president and just replaced him? Brushed their hands? Who's the we? So this tells me something. For a month, it was joy. We don't got anything. It's joy. The campaign's one of joy. Joy. It's joy, and it's white guy tacos. It's joy. And the polls are flipping. So the internal polls aren't showing anything because they just went full blast. Okay, dictator day one. What happened to the joy? And everybody's moving with it. But Trump never said dictator day one.
I think
in that context,
I think people are so anxious to be a part of something. I mean, you talked about the yard signs and how they go, they contradict each other. I think everybody's so anxious for things to feel better that they aren't paying attention to what's going to make them better.
That's pretty deep. What'd you think of that, George?
I'm still chewing on it. No, it's a good point. Yeah,
I mean, it is. I mean, we are at a point we want to be a part of something, and whether it's putting a yard sign or whether it's going to a political campaign or wearing a T-shirt, but we're not looking at the substance of it all.
You challenge people's orthodoxy and they freak out.
Yeah, and they get mad. But I'm going to say this: Elon Musk tweeted something the other day, and it talked about when you, in summary, if you like someone, no matter what they do, it's great. If you don't like someone, no matter what they do, it's horrible. And that's where we are. We don't give anybody on the other side another chance. We don't want to see anything or hear anything other than what we choose to believe.
And when you tell the truth, I mean, how many, it used to be this, the mainstream media was big and stuff, like the way they would shut you down, and I know because they try to violate the First Amendment, sue me a million times for defamation. It's the mayor. It's the like, dude, that's poison. That's in the ground. These are the documents. That's defamation. Get the fuck out of here. So what they would do, you just go to the publisher or a prominent editor and you get it pulled. You know what I mean? Like the weapons of mass destruction. The New York Times, some reporters were questioning it in 2003, but a call was made to the big boys. And so you shut it down. Right? That's the way it used to work. Or Bob Facano or any of these people, the chiefs of police, get in their SUVs, drive and bully the publisher. You know, that's what they did. And it worked a lot of times. Sadly, that's kind of why I walk. But now they don't have that control. And I think that's what's tripping them out. So let's talk about something you're working on. Just something about numbers and how these numbers can be manipulated. George, you're the crime dog, dude. Like, the guys I know at the New York Times don't hold a fucking candle to you. Can't write. Just I'm telling you, dude. I mean, you are built exactly for that job. Crime in America, is it up? Is it down? What do you see, George?
Well, it's interesting. We're in election season, so Trump says we are in a crime wave like we've never seen. Not true. Biden says said, you know, when he was president, he's still president, but you know what I mean?
Is he?
Yeah.
Is he?
Who the fuck is president?
That's what I saw on the masthead. But no, I mean, and he says that we're dropping at record levels, which again, that's also not totally true. It's hard to tell. As you know, New York, Chicago, LA, Miami, all these big cities stopped, the big crime cities. In 2021, they just stopped reporting to the FBI. What I was told is they went to the new NIBRs, the FBI did, and there's a lot more data points. So I'm told that this is going to be a much better comprehensive system, but the problem is it's so labor intensive. Now, I don't know, they may have politically motivated decide not to show their crime numbers as well, but what I was told is that a lot of it was the labor involved in putting all these data in, and they just said to hell with it, we're not going to report it. But the upshot is well, of course crime's going to be down if so many people aren't reporting. And you look at then things like the national, the Department of Justice has the National Crime Victimization Survey. They do that every year. They question 240,000 people. And that shot up from 21 to 22. That's the most recent numbers.
That survey
shot up by.
You asked people specifically, were they victims of a violent crime? Okay.
And the idea of that is they're trying to bridge the gap, what's known as the dark matter of crime, where the unreported crimes. You know, I mean, if somebody gets their house broken into, how many really call the cops anymore? And especially what's interesting is that happens the most in the high crime areas. So, I mean, the paradox there is that you're in a place like the red zone. If you live in the red zone, which is, you know, Detroit 48205, and someone breaks into your car, you're probably not going to report that. Whereas like downtown Detroit, if you look at the numbers, downtown is the most crime-ridden area you would think. Because first of all, there's how many thousands, it's the biggest neighborhood in the city, really, when you think about it. And you have all these people. But the point is that every crime gets, if someone breaks into someone's car downtown, that's getting reported. You know, because they're used to reporting it out in Berkeley or wherever.
Exactly.
And you know, whereas in Detroit and some of these neighborhoods, they're not going to report.
It's normalized.
Yeah, they're not going to report that.
And it's overlooked.
Which that's not even included in the data because that's not violent
crime.
It's
called the dark matter. It doesn't even think. Now, violent crime, homicide particularly, and we were talking earlier, it's hard to hide the body. So homicide's one of the good ones to get a gauge on what's happening. And you and Santiago Esparza years ago uncovered that they were fudging some numbers, and the genius way to do that is you guys looked at the morgue at the Wayne County Medical Examiner and found that the body counts weren't met, what they were ruling homicides. Now allowing for, there are some justifieds in there, and that's not a crime. So but they still had to revamp their numbers based on your guys' reporting for the news. And that leapfrogged them into now they're the first in the country, and it had big political ramifications. And I was telling you, after you guys did that, I FOIA'd that every year. I have a whole stack of the Wayne counties, so I would double check their numbers.
So every year you would ask the morgue and the police for their body count.
And there would be usually 3 or 4 maybe, and then I'd call DPD and we'd drill down on that. Like, okay, that guy was shot then, but he died this year. And they were able to explain those. So, but the point is you could double check them. Well, in 2020, they stopped giving me that report. They said we don't do that report, so you can't double check. I can't double check their numbers.
They stopped giving you the murder count.
Yeah, they said there's no, because they don't. You know how it works with FOIA is that there's not a list that exists. They don't have to provide it for you, and they just said no list exists anymore. And it's interesting. One last thing about that is they used to provide far more comprehensive data, including the hometowns of the victims. And one year, I would FOIA these January 2nd, the first of the year. I want to get your previous year's count because the DPD puts their numbers out. So they would also put in the hometowns of the victims. Well, one year, it was like 18% of the homicide victims in Detroit weren't from Detroit. And we ran a story that said that these were out-of-towners. Well, it ran the same day the auto show came in. So I got inundated with the Chamber of Commerce and all these. Why? How dare you talk about how out-of-towners are getting killed in Detroit on the eve when the auto show comes in? I was like, look, I didn't time it that way. And I'm not. My job isn't to, basically I told him to take a walk. I don't work for the Chamber of Commerce. I don't care what ramifications my story might have on tourism.
But that's work, though, George, and that's what people don't put into it anymore. They don't. I mean, you're talking, cross-referencing data, FOIA and documents, sitting down with DPD to drill down in the numbers and seek explanations and comparing stuff.
It does happen, not as often as you'd like. I mean, we got Rob Snell, Christine McDonald works for the Freep. She's one of the best. I hated to lose her, to the Freep, but she's one of the best. There's good reporters out there still,
Well, and not to take away from the reporter themselves, but as we talk about all the time, the business model and the resources have changed, and so it's different now. So it doesn't allow them to do it as much as they did.
That all is true, but what changes the culture? He just said it. The Blob called. The Blob being the downtown regional chamber. They called. Now we're all together. It's a comeback. It was explained to me by a pretty nifty political reporter after the bankruptcy. Why wasn't all of this shit? Why wasn't Duggan more vetted in his career? We were pretty busy with the bankruptcy, and we all got tired of the narrative that, the city's on its knees. Let's write good stuff. Well, we can't really get good stuff if you're not willing to tell people.
But you're absolutely right, Charlie. I remember once the Free Press, we were in the middle of, I think there were so many kids that had gotten shot one summer. I mean, it was crazy. And, the city was working to try to figure out, bringing a community group, doing the normal stuff. But the Free Press ran a story. It was on the front page above the fold. There was a picture of a young black guy in a convertible with a gun on his lap. I'll never forget that. And we asked them, what is your rationale behind doing this at a time when we're, and it was like, it was a dismissiveness from the media in terms of being a partner with the city, not just for controlling information or influencing, but just saying, hey, we want to get stuff out that's going to help people. Just, I don't know.
Well, it's flipped now.
Different. Yeah, it's completely flipped.
Yes.
Completely. George said no comment.
George said no comment.
Oh, I'm always leery of working with, any city or anything like that.
Governmental
and it's not our job to make things look better. It just isn't.
Not to make it look good at all. I understand that. But I mean, there was always a defensiveness and a pushback and just a counterproductivity in terms of just a partnership. And I guess it's so surprising now because now it's like Charlie said, it's a complete 180.
Yeah. So since George is here and he's like the best of the best, let me explain to the national media who now they're all eager beavers. You know what's great? You know what's great about these eager beaver? I'm like highly overeducated because now everybody goes to Harvard. Doesn't matter where you come from. If you go to Harvard, you're a reporter. They don't know how to use the English language. They can't write. They're not good at it. You're not good at words, motherfuckers. It's awesome. Yeah. But here's what I'm going to tell you. George is talking about the numbers. When we talk about jobs, we talk about crime. The jobs report, the crime report. Within both of those, there are 2 surveys. So George was telling you about the surveys. One is NIBRS. That's National Incident, right?
Incident-based reporting system. Yeah.
That's the cops.
Cops reporting.
That's the cops. It's no longer vetted by the FBI. Whatever the cops want to give them, that's what it is. Didn't used to be that way in the old system in 2021. No one's even looking at the numbers. There's another one that George just said. It's the Crime Victim Survey. They ask you. So the Crime Victim Survey and the police numbers always kept pace with each other. They were parallel. All of a sudden, they're doing this. The police are saying crime's going down, and the people are saying crime's going up. I'm not reporting it.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to be Bill Bratton to figure that out. If Chicago and New York and L.A. and Philly and Miami aren't reporting their crimes, well, of course, nationally, crime's going to go down.
Mm-hmm. And you know who told me to pay attention to the victim survey?
Who?
Bill Bratton.
Yeah,
he goes, there's 2 wings of this.
Yeah.
So there's the establishment and there's the people. Who do you believe? In the jobs report, and we know these job numbers are cooked, because, right, 818,000 were just erased. I don't even know what the number is under Biden anymore. But there's the jobs report. And in the jobs report are 2 surveys. The establishment survey, that's the companies, the bosses. These are the jobs we created or lost. Even if they're part-time, a part-time job is a job, right? Mm-hmm. One person working 2 part-time jobs, that's 2 jobs. That's one. There's Go Up. Media reports that. Then there's the household survey. You knock on the door, a couple 100,000 people. Well, hey, what happened? I got laid off. That gives you the unemployment number, the fact nobody's working full time, and how many people are working a couple of jobs. The media reports the establishment every time. They have no belief and no interest in what the people are telling them. So when we're getting the push and the narrative, as you like to say, the people are going, what? I don't believe any of this shit I'm seeing.
Yeah, and you talked about not working with, but the reality is now, and Charlie and I've talked about this before, everybody wants to be invited to the party. So they want to be friends with the people, the decision makers, the elected officials. Then it wasn't a contentious relationship, but it was a us versus them because you were held in a position of accountability.
I mean, it should be neither. I mean, I'm friendly with a lot of people in positions of police
You're
power.
Respected. There's a mutual respect
thank you.
there.
Well, that's because they know. I mean, if they do something that's newsworthy, I'm covering it. It's not personal.
Right.
So I can be friendly with you, but if you do something, some of the people whom I'm friendly with, I've written stories that don't make them look good.
Right.
But the thing is always my mantra is, A, you got to be like honest, duh.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And don't and I've had people come to me with data that says, look, what you're showing is wrong. Here's the data. It's like, okay, I've had stories pulled up. But the second thing is, don't give them any surprises. If you tell them the stories about this, and sometimes at 6 o'clock at night the story might take a left turn, place that call. That source shouldn't wake up in the morning and read the newspaper and say, wait a minute, I thought the story, at least now they know. And then you give them a chance to, just give people a chance to, I mean, again, if you're just honest about it and you go into it and say, look, this is the story I'm doing. And if you don't like that, then I don't want anything to do with you. I don't care.
So that's the work versus printing the talking points, which is what we see a lot of.
Sure.
So.
George Hunter's covered crime for the Detroit News for nearly 3 decades. He's appeared in true crime documentaries that have aired across the States, Germany, Japan, England, France, and Denmark. A Detroit native, Hunter wrote and produced an award-winning 5-part podcast about wrongful convictions, Sins of Detroit, and has authored 5 books about crime in and around the city. This is his latest, Monsters in the Corridor, where he grew up, taking a look at the 80s.
70s.
Yeah, the 70s.
Wow. I'm older than you think, bro. Just for men.
Anyway, you can get it on Amazon. Great writer. Thanks for being here, George.
Thank you.
And before we go, just after that trip around the factory in Warren, and God bless all of you that work there, hope it works out. They're not happy. Want to replay this 1 Ton Trolley song when we went from East Palestine, Ohio to Detroit. And just, if you're listening, just go to my ex, Charlie LeDuff, watch it. It's Byron Goggins' pictures, 1 Ton Trolley's music. And it's just going up the Rust Belt from East Palestine to Lordstown to Youngstown to Akron to Cleveland to Toledo to Detroit. I think it's a nice little poem for the times we're living in. Talk to y'all next week.
There's some things about me you should know. There's some things I never want to show. I never want to be the one to hide, not share what's broke inside, but trust is key. Sometimes things we see can't be unseen.
Oh my God.
And sometimes people flaunt them when they're mean. We never want to be the one to bleed, so we hang on to our greed and push away. We never want to be the one to cry, our fists thrust to the sky and think we win. Well, don't tell me that I should turn aside the things that I don't think are right. I see
Youngstown stealing too.
And don't tell me that I should close my eyes to this three-ring circus built on lies. I see. No, don't tell me. I see. I see. A man think he's the one to choose who will claim the prize and who will lose. We give away our power to decide to those who don't abide by our needs. We line up just like cattle to the blade. Our decisions have all been made conveniently. Well, don't tell me not to be surprised. Complications will arise, I see. And don't tell me you think it's for the best. Get in line with all the rest, I see. And don't tell me that I should draw the shade, disregard the grand charade, I see. No, don't tell me.